Mayor Pro Tem Ott. Trustee Kovanchuk. Trustee Westcott.
Here.
Trustee White.
Here.
Trustee Cohen.
Here.
Thank you. We do not.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Trustee Kovanchuk.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call please.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Trustee Kovanchuk.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Trustee Ott, is your microphone on? Because we keep hearing
There
people.
we go. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Public hearing, open a public hearing in resolution 2021-09, a resolution summarizing expenditures and revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Lochbuie, Colorado for the calendar year beginning on the first day of January 22 and ending on the last day of December 22, and appropriating sums of money. Room?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ott. First and foremost, this is a required public hearing. Notice of the public hearing has been properly posted in the town's legal newspaper, so it is proper that the board conduct this public hearing tonight. Staff is proud to present the draft 2022 budget for your consideration tonight. Related to the resolution to adopt the budget is Resolution 2021-10, which is a resolution to officially set the 2022 mill levies. Both items are in order and ready for your consideration. We've included a presentation in the packet that's very similar to the presentation we provided to the board summarizing the budget back on October 5th. There's been very few changes to the budget document itself since October 5th. We're happy to walk through that presentation if the board members would like us to. Otherwise, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. And we would wholeheartedly recommend that the board adopt both Resolution 2021-09 and 2021-10.
Trustee Westcott, would you like to see the presentation, or do you have any questions?
I do not need to, and I do not have any questions.
Trustee White, do you have any questions, or would you like to see the presentation?
Nor do I. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Trustee Kovanchuk, do you have any questions, or would like to see the presentation?
No, sir, I do not.
And Trustee Cohen, do you have any questions, or would like to see the presentation?
No, thank you.
I do not either, so I will entertain a motion to pass first 2021-09, and then, excuse me.
Before taking action, I think it'd be appropriate to close the public hearing.
I moved, so we have to have a motion to close the public hearing.
There's no motion required to
Motion,
close
so
the public hearing. No.
Public hearing on action items is closed. Need a motion to adopt 2021-09 and 10. I think they have to be separate.
Make a motion to adopt resolution 21 -09.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ott,
Yes.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Kovacek,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
And motion carries, and it becomes official. Now I'll entertain a motion for 2021-10. And excuse me, Maureen, do we have to read this aloud, or should we just make the motion to approve it?
You can just do a motion to approve Resolution 21-10. It doesn't require a public hearing. It's just the setting of the mill levies to raise the funds necessary to meet the budgetary requirements.
Thank you.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2021-10.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Ott, Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Kovacek.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Next, we move on to approval of contract for survey services for the wastewater manholes. Mr. Monroe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ott. As we've included in the packet, the town has been in the process of updating its wastewater utility master plan over the course of the past year. It's a very detailed plan that lays out a long-term plan for building out the town's wastewater utility system, including expansions to the wastewater treatment facility and expansions to the town's collection systems. As part of that process, the consultant is using survey data of all of the existing infrastructure related to the wastewater system. One thing the consultant found when doing the planning work is that we're missing some survey data. The survey data the consultant in the town believed we had is missing some manholes. So manholes are connection points in the town's sanitary sewer system. Detailed survey information of the elevations of those manholes and the pipes in them is critical for this long-range planning effort. So in an effort to collect the necessary information, we need to survey about 500 manholes that aren't part of the town's existing geographic information system. We've included in the packet a proposal from the company that's doing the master plan to collect that information. In order to keep costs down for this additional survey work, town staff is helping out with that work. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the total cost to do the work, including some extra money budgeted in case there are some additional manholes that we find that we need information collected for, is just a little under $30,000. So staff would recommend that the board approve that expenditure. There are funds available in the town's wastewater utility budget.
And if my understanding is correct, this was just, we didn't know this and we approved the contract last year.
Correct. If we'd have been aware of the need to collect this additional information, the original contract would have had to include the scope of work. So it's information we would have needed, just learning about it a little bit later in the process. The project is, the wastewater utility master plan project is entering its final phases. We should have an initial draft of the plan in the first quarter next year. So certainly this work is critical to getting the project finished.
Trustee Cohen, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Trustee Kovacek?
No, sir.
Trustee Westcott?
I do not. Thank you.
Trustee White?
Nothing, thank you.
And as there are no questions, I will entertain a motion to approve the wastewater manholes agreement.
I move that we approve the quote and survey agreement with Martin Martin, not to exceed the amount of $29,700.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ott,
Yes?
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Kovencheck,
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Thank you.
And motion passes. Moving on, I'm going to open the public hearing for the first consideration of the First Amendment to a service plan for the Blue Lake Metropolitan District Number 1. Ms. Duran.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. You have a memo from me in your packet. Title 32 special districts operate in accordance with what's called their service plan that outlines such important issues as what their service area is, what their services are, what their debt limits are, all those kind of issues. Under state law, the service plans for Title 32 special districts have to be approved by the governing body of the municipality or the county in which the service or the special district is formed. The Blue Lake Metropolitan District was formed within the town of Loch Bowie under state law. Also, when you want to amend that service plan, you need to bring it back to the governing body of the municipality or the county that initially approved the service plan. And so the applicant is here tonight to request a First Amendment to the Blue Lake Metropolitan District Number 1 Service Plan. I'll introduce Matt Ruland to you, who's counsel for the developer in this case, and the district, and he can explain a little bit more about the substance of the amendment that's requested and the rationale for that. Can you hear us, Matt?
I can. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me? Okay, perfect. I saw a thumbs up. Wonderful. Well, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and trustees. I am Matt Ruland with the law firm of Collins, Cockrell & Cole. I'm here as general counsel to the Blue Lake Metropolitan District Number 1. Also in attendance in person at the hearing are Mark Bush and Charlie Foster. They're both directors with the district. First, I want to thank you for your time and consideration this evening on the First Amendment for the service plan. And I'd like to start off by thanking Maureen and town staff. They've been very exceptional to work with, and their efforts and cooperation in getting us here tonight are very much appreciated. So we submitted a certification for publication and of mailing and publication of the notice for tonight's hearing to Crystal Sanchez and Maureen this afternoon. But for the official record, I just want to make it noted that the notice for tonight's hearing was published in the Brighton Standard Blade on November 17th and mailed pursuant to section 32-1-204 on November 11th. So all notices have been properly provided, and we can have the public hearing tonight. Maureen did provide a memo to the board that was in the board packet. It accurately and succinctly described what we're doing here today, and I don't want to take up your time as I know it's valuable. So I would say we are here for questions. If you had questions on the memo or the purpose of the service plan amendment, we're happy to get into it. But once again, I know that the board packet contained a staff report, and I don't want to repeat it if you guys have read it and understand and have no questions. So we are here, Mark, myself, and Charlie for questions.
Thank you. Mark or Charlie, would you like to make a statement or provide any additional information?
Charlie and I are both members of the Blue Lake Metropolitan District Number 1. Matt's the general counsel. Just echo Maureen's comments and Matt's to the extent what we're really asking for is, or narrowing down the amendment, we're just looking to increase the service plan authorized debt. I think I've said that to reflect kind of current conditions as it relates to the district. The district was originally in the debt level within the service plan was approved in 2004. Obviously, things have become extraordinarily more expensive. And as a lot of you are aware, that we're working on water rights and water infrastructure that we're looking to allow the district to participate in. And that's why you'll see in the memorandum that Maureen included in your package, it just shows you kind of the new kind of general estimated costs. So that's really it in a in a nutshell. And so we're really here to answer any questions you may have and get a chance to see everybody again. So thank you.
Trustee Westcott, any questions for any of the participants?
Yeah, so with this increase in the debt level, what impact is that going to have on the existing Metropolitan District fees for existing residents? And then I guess as you continue to build, how is that going to impact as you continue to build?
There are no,
Matt, you want to answer that, or would you like me to?
I'll take first stab and you can supplement if you'd like.
Sure.
There are no residents within this district. It is all the remaining part of the Blue Lake development. All development so far has been in either Blue Lake number 2 or 3, and this will have no impact on their fees, levy rates, or any impact on those residents at all.
And as part of the process here, that the service plan amendment isn't addressing any increase of mill levies or anything of that associated with it. So there's no residents current, just to echo what Matt said, there's no current residences in Bella Vista that are within the boundaries of Blue Lake number 1. So there'll be no impact at all for the current homeowners, and but I don't think I think Matt summed it up also too.
And the service plan does not increase the mill levy authorizations under the service plan. We're capped at 50 mills, the same as we were under the original service plan, and it does not change the ability for the district to impose fees, which the district has the authorization to do. So there are no changes with that. It is simply addressing the impact of the cost of infrastructure increasing significantly since 2004 when these were formed, as well as the increased infrastructure intention of securing water in the water infrastructure that was not considered at that time.
Thank you. Any other questions, Trustee Westcott? Trustee Cohen, any questions, comments, or anybody?
No, not at this time, thanks.
Trustee White, questions, comments for anyone?
I do have some questions, and I'm going to show some of my greenness, so forgive me. But my question is, the way that you're sitting right now with your cap, the way it's set and the mill levy, as it's set, and you said that's not going to change, how does that affect someone who's going to be buying a home in your development? Let's say we say no today and you can't increase your cap, versus us changing it to a yes and increasing that cap. How does that affect each homeowner that's going to be purchasing a house on in this development?
Matt, you want to answer that, or would you like me to?
I'll let you take the first stab because I
All right.
your thoughts on this one, then I'll supplement on this one.
Trustee White, it'll be an increase in the mill levy, the overall mills that a taxpayer or a future homeowner will pay. Right now, typically the mills are, if I'm not mistaken, are about pre-district in the 90s or 80 level. And then let's just say the additional 50 mills will be placed on each homeowner's obligations on their annual taxes that they pay to the county. And then that, we can get into the philosophy. It's kind of a larger discussion about the financing of public infrastructure, et cetera, as it relates to amortizing costs of public infrastructure for homeowners over a 30-year time frame rather than having to pay that amount up front at closing on a house. So there's very strong evidence that allowing public infrastructure to be financed over 30 years through a homeowner's tax rate rather than having to pay $20,000 or potentially $30,000 or whatever, pick a number at closing to recapture those public infrastructure costs that are built actually into the cost of the home. So I think for a standpoint of existing residences out there, this particular action as it relates to Blue Lake number 1 has no impact whatsoever and no change. And then number 2, it would be point number 2 is for future homeowners, they would incur a very similar tax mill levy as existing residents, not only in, say, Bella Vista, but also very similar to Silver Peaks and Loch Bouie Station that we have in the community now.
And I would just add to that the mill levy rates will not change. So, from day one, the taxes will be the same. The bond issuance would likely be less, but I think from a practical standpoint, a project like this has significant water needs and infrastructure needs. And without the district having the bonding capacity that we're seeking, I'll let Mark tell me if I'm off base here, but I'm not sure the project can go forward. So there would not be future homeowners because there needs to be a way to finance this infrastructure and water. And this is the way things are allowed in the structure for financing in Colorado that is used most. And so without it, it's a challenge to get a development with this much infrastructure needs off the ground.
I think that's well said, Matt. I don't really necessarily have anything to add to that. It's a critical component of land infrastructure is allowing this kind of quasi-public financing.
I would like to ask, when you guys went back and reevaluated with these cost increase, out of that total percentage of the unexpected, or I guess it should have been expected because it's been several years. You said this was 2004. So that should have been expected. There was going to be some inflation over this much time, but let's say out of 100%, with this increase that you're asking us to pass on to your homeowners, how much of that percentage are you guys swallowing as a company?
How much are we?
Yes. Or
Well, we have,
being built?
I mean, we're going to be, the cost, well, actually, maybe there's even a subtle distinction that needs to be made. I know the amendment has it increasing to $50 million. I mean, fundamentally, the district's limited to its financing capacity based upon assessed valuation in the homes, as well as assessed value or potential revenue streams relative to the district participating in the acquisition of water and the water delivery infrastructure. Right now, we don't project the ability to necessarily finance up to 50 million. So it's not like there's this endless bucket of money associated with the capacity, but it's 2004. I just reflect everybody that 17 years ago, we didn't anticipate. We had 7 years of no activity from 2006 to 2013. With the housing recession that occurred, that wasn't even in the magic 8 ball back in 2004. So this is not uncommon. We've done this on 2 of our other communities that we have metropolitan districts. We've had service plan increases. No one really anticipated that 6-year time frame, and then also the inflationary period we've been in the last 24 months as it relates to construction costs that have gone up 20-25%, just literally in the last 18 months.
And I would also add that, Trustee White, that the projections right now show that we project possibly issuing enough debt to pay for around $29 million of infrastructure, which would leave $20 million or so to be funded through the developer or other means that are not related to the district in any way.
Yeah, and I would add that our projected lot count, future lot count within the community is about 840 home sites. It's well above. I mean, the public infrastructure is going to cost significantly higher than the financing capacity of the district. There'll be probably, for every dollar the Metro District comes that privately, it's going to be funded two times that, if not more. And one of the key components of the financing, we've been working with Brian and staff and so on as it relates to some identified water rights that we have to bring the community plus infrastructure associated with that. That's going to gobble up a significant amount, but not to get too much into the weeds in terms of development, but it could easily be $40,000 a home site to finish it, to do the public improvements, and there's not even any close to that in the financing capacity of the assessed valuation. So there's substantial private investment is really the answer, outside of the Metro District funding.
Any other questions, Trustee White?
Not at this time, thank you.
Trustee Kovencheck, any questions for anybody?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve
Yeah.
the,
I'm sorry, I have a point of clarification. Can I go again? Just to clarify to make sure I understand correctly, the original agreement for District 1 future homeowners allowed that there could be a mill levy of up to 50.628, it looks like. And what I think we're doing here is not changing that. So we're saying future homeowners in that district could still only incur a mill levy of 50.628 on their new home. Is that correct? We're not changing that cap.
Matt, you're probably more articulate on it. It's 50, no, that cap has not been changed. There is something called a Gallagher. I don't want any surprises. There's a Gallagherization of mill levies that is allowed under the state that, Matt, maybe you're probably more articulate. I'm not very articulate right now, but maybe you could I just want to make sure that Trustee Cohen, that it's been moved up to, say, 55 mills
Okay.
as a result of Tabor and some things that are above my specific ability to kind of articulate to you. But no, that is still fundamentally, we can't just wake up and say, oh, we're going to charge 8 mills.
I'm just looking at the document here that has that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
it
which
makes
one
it
of these is
competitive
the-
also too, to the extent that we're trying to sell homes. I mean, to have, there's people in the room who are familiar with monster mill levies and how they're responded to by the public, and it's not a positive thing, but actually that mill levy that we're talking about is regionally at the bottom end of what a lot of the metro districts are asking for right now in terms of mill levies. And I think that Brian could confirm that based upon his regional experience.
I just wanted to clarify that if we approve this, we're approving your ability to increase the debt, not the mill levy.
That's correct.
And yeah, I want to make that point very clear, Trustee, that yes, we intentionally limited this service plan amendment to make it, we didn't even change or touch the sections that dealt with the mill levies, because we want to be clear that we are not trying to increase the mill levies. We are living within the original service plan with all those intentions. So it was a very good question. I thank you for asking it so we can make sure it's clear for everyone. We are not increasing the mill levies authorizations for the district.
thank you. Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve the First Amendment Service Plan for Blue Lake.
Make a motion to approve the First Amendment to Blue Lake Metropolitan District Number 1 Service Plan as presented at this meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Kovenchik,
Yes.
Trustee Ott,
Yes,
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
and motion carries. Moving on, we're approval of a professional service agreement for Public Works Management. As we all know, our Public Works Manager moved to Brighton, and we have a very experienced person who's been here with the town before. So we are going to turn this over to Mr. McBroom and go from there.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Ott. Mark John's departure did leave a gap in the organization. We've been able to cover a lot of daily operational needs in Public Works by shifting duties around to existing staff. We are missing some technical expertise in the field of Public Works administration, particularly on a number of projects that are in progress. Mr. Karani comes to us with a great deal of past experience, I think 37 years in local government, public works, service work. He's already provided a lift to us in helping advance some projects that were in process already. Yes, to have Mr. Karani work with us for about 2 or 3 months, above and beyond what my limit is to purchase goods and services as the town administrator. And as Mayor Pro Tem Ott mentioned, in Mr. Karani's experience, he actually spent a short time, less than a year, with the town of Lochbuie back in 2012. So again, he's already provided a lift to us and getting these projects moving along. He's here tonight if anybody has any questions for him, but I would recommend approval of the professional services agreement that's included in your packet. That is our standard professional services agreement template as well.
And what do we estimate the cost to be?
I think total cost I've estimated is about $36,000. The source of that funds would essentially be salary savings because the position that Mark Johns vacated is currently vacant, so we're not spending those funds on that person's salary. So that would be the source of funding.
Mr. Carney, would you like to take the podium?
Marco Carani. I live at 1500 Park Drive, Loveland, Colorado.
No questions, thank you.
No, sir.
Trustee Westcott?
I just want to be clear. So I think bringing someone on to fill the gap until we can hire a public works manager is a smart move. What happens if we get someone hired within the next few weeks? I don't know if that's possible. Will we just have a doubled up contract, or tell me what's going to happen in that case?
That's a very good question. I think at this point, I think it's unlikely we'll have the position filled within the next 60 days. So it is possible there could be a bit of overlap in order to help the new public works director get up to speed on the projects that Mr. Karani is working on for us. I don't expect much overlap. Again, at this point, I would anticipate at least 60 days before we have the position filled. You may recall from a prior update that I provided, we had posted the position as a public works director, town engineer. We had very little interest, actually just one qualified applicant, not a good fit for the organization. So we're reposting the position, essentially starting the process over, eliminating the town engineer portion and just advertising for a public works director. So that's why I think we're probably looking at 60 days. Mr. Karani has he's actually moving out of state in March. So the goal is to have the position filled before Mr. Karani moves out of state in March. I think we will, but I think that's more likely to be the problem, that Mr. Karani may have to relocate before we've actually filled the position.
Any other questions? Trustee White?
No, thank you.
Okay, and with that, I will take a motion to approve the professional service agreement.
I move to approve the professional service agreement with MTC Consulting LLC with a not to exceed the amount of $36,000.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Cohen.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yeah.
Trustee Kovenchik.
Yes.
Trustee Ott.
Yes.
Trustee White.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carney.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Look forward to working.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the board. You do have before you a request for the board to provide the mayor with the authority to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation. You may recall earlier this year that the state of Colorado awarded the town a grant to assist with the installation of traffic signals at the I-76 and County Road 2 interchange. Executing this particular agreement would allow the town to receive grant funds in the amount of $1.55 million. Now, the overall project cost is estimated at about $1.75, so this grant would cover most of that expense to the town. The town, in fact, would only be responsible for about $200,000 in design costs. This is an important project, and the state is offering to pay for the majority of it, so staff does recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the request and provide Mayor Mahoney with the authority to sign this agreement. If the board does choose to move forward, design work would start almost immediately, and it would take most of '22 to complete. Then construction would then start late in 2022 and then conclude at some point, hopefully early in 2023. And with that, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Trustee Kovencheck, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Trustee White, any questions?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. This was much needed.
Trustee Westcott?
I have nothing, thank you.
Trustee Cohen?
I do have one question. The matching funds that we're responsible for, I should know the answer to this, but is that already in the proposed budget that we just approved? Yes. Great, thank you. That's all I have.
And thank you. The only question I had was concerning the frontage road, but that's not for this discussion, that's for later. So we have no further questions. I will entertain a motion to approve the intergovernmental agreement.
I move that the board give Mayor Mahoney the authority to sign the attached intergovernmental agreement with the Colorado Department of Transportation so that the town of Loch Buoy may receive a $1.55 million grant for the design and construction of the I-76 signalization project.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee White,
Yes.
Trustee Kovencheck,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Trustee Ott,
Aye.
Trustee Coven.
Yes.
Thank you.
And motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Appreciate your information. Procurement policy update. I guess we're expanding our procurement policy. Mr. McBroom?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, we are expanding our procurement policy just a bit. The current town procurement policy is 7 pages long. The new draft document is 39 pages long. I can assure you, though, there are important updates and advancements in the updated policy. We do have a few slides to walk through the highlights of the changes. It's a long document. It gets into a bit of it, local government administrative minutia, but it is a policy document that ultimately we would be asking the Board of Trustees to approve. So I'd like to take a few minutes and walk through these slides to hit highlights of what's in the document and then answer any questions you might have. Like we did with the employee handbook, the idea is to review the document with you tonight, answer questions, make any changes the board members think would be necessary, and then present a final version of the updated procurement policy on the board agenda for January 4th, unless the changes the board has us make are more significant and it takes more time to update. So like the employee handbook, just a discussion tonight, an overview, a chance to answer questions, consider any changes you might like us to make, and then we would present the document for approval at a later meeting. The current procurement policy the town staff and the board operates under was adopted in 2014, very much focuses on process. A big part of town operations is buying goods and services, so it's important to spend taxpayer dollars properly and transparently, and that's what the procurement policy helps us do. The proposed policy expands that current document and adds a lot more information in it. And there's really 2 main reasons for doing that. One is to provide much clearer direction and expectations for town staff when we're spending taxpayer dollars and setting appropriate expectations. And then secondly, it's to make sure the town board sets that appropriate policy so that we are able to spend money transparently and in accordance with the town board's goals and in accordance with the adopted budget. So we've added a bunch of additional categories and chapters, if you will, in this new policy, and we've listed them here. Some key highlights, it adds more process, more in different kinds of bids, very much in keeping with best practices that we've learned about in other communities. Outlines restrictions, such as no personal purchases. Purchases can only be made by town employees only. Proper accounting of purchases, no purchasing of alcohol, The town and employees doing purchasing for the town are not to pay sales tax on purchases because we are a sales tax exempt organization. Our purchasing practices are not allowed to entitle any employee to any personal gain, and it's inappropriate to make purchases that aren't budgeted. So every purchase we make has to be in accordance with the budget adopted by the town board. There are thresholds that have been changed in the new policy, again, I think in keeping with best practices, and thresholds that help us to operate town government more efficiently than we can under the current policy. Some notable changes we would especially want to call your attention to. I'm going to refer to the slides here because I can't see those on the screen. This updated policy continues to allow town staff to purchase in what's called a decentralized fashion. Some organizations will centralize purchasing with an individual or a department. In our case, we think we operate most effectively with a decentralized system, which is possible with good direction in a purchasing policy. Again, it lists very clear purchasing authorizations, how much spending authority, purchasing authority do people in the organization have. Departments must make it clear who has purchasing authority within their respective departments. Also, contracting authority. This updated policy does give the town administrator to enter into agreements that have been approved by the board without requiring that the board approve the mayor's signature, like we had to do tonight with the previous item. Credit card purchasing is a big area of responsibility for town employees that are issued a town credit card, so it's important to have good guidance and good structure around how we use those credit cards. We have updated guidelines for the use of petty cash, updated procedures for receiving items purchased. That's an important part of the purchasing process. Also, we've added more guidance and policy structure around check preparation when we are issuing a check to purchase items. We've also got some additional language in the policy for what we call miscellaneous purchasing for infrequent purchases, such as dues, subscriptions, meals, and flowers. And we've added quite a bit of language at the end of this draft document regarding federal projects. As you can imagine, federal money is wonderful to have to use for projects like the I-76 signalization project, but there are always strings attached. The federal government has a lot of purchasing guidelines that are our responsibility if we're using federal money in a project. So we've added quite a bit of language there. Again, a lot of the updates we've made are what we would consider best practices that we've borrowed from other communities that have more sophisticated purchasing policies than we do. So we think these are all important updates that meet good best practices, but also allow us to operate efficiently, which is equally important. These are the overall objectives of the updated policy. It's important that a policy have a purpose. It's not about adding bureaucracy or red tape. It's about achieving higher level goals for effectively operating town government. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions you might have, provide clarifications. If you've seen things that don't look right to you, we'd like to talk with you about.
Trustee Kovencheck?
I did have one thing I wanted to discuss, and that was a quick discussion on the possibility of looking into utilizing some sort of traffic control device at the intersection of 168th and Freestone. I had a few people question me about that. Last night, for example, there was a pretty bad accident right there at that intersection. It's a very busy intersection. So I would like to propose that we look into and see if that would be a warranted necessity in that area.
Any comments on that, Mr. McBroom?
I had a chance to visit with trustee Kovanchik briefly before the meeting. I understand his concern. I think it's a good idea for us to investigate that intersection and see what might be necessary. We're happy to take that on as an action item unless there's an objection from anybody else on the board.
Anyone have any objections to that? And how much are we restricted by what we can do by the fact we're a statutory town and not a home rule town?
Well, in our brief discussion prior to the meeting, I would see potentially a three-step process. Initially, we can look to see what existing information there is within town records, within the development agreement for Silver Peaks, within the development agreement for the development on the south side of 168th in the city of Brighton. Were there any preconditions set for signalizing the intersection or any other sort of traffic control? So that's step number one. Step number two, if nothing exists, but we're noticing increasing traffic safety concerns at the intersection, the next step would be to more formally review what's called traffic warrants at the intersection. Have a properly credentialed traffic engineer formally study the intersection and then provide some recommendations to us on what would be necessary. And then thirdly, if that study recommends some improvements at the intersection, we would need to have a discussion about how to pay for that. Fortunately or unfortunately, because that's a boundary road, we will have a partner on the south side of the road, the city of Brighton, to participate with us. It can make execution more complicated, but it'll help when trying to find the funds to make an improvement if that turns out to be necessary. So we'll take that first step, that phase one, investigate what information is out there. Was any sort of traffic control previously contemplated at the intersection? If so, when and who's responsible for paying for that? And we'll report back and let you know what we found and then see if it's appropriate to take the next step.
Thank you.
May I say something? Now that you mentioned that about Brighton and being across the street there, I recall that this has come up before as far as that a crossing there as well as across from Jewel. And if I recall correctly, it was right as Steve was leaving, and I think Mark was still fairly new at the time, but somebody had mentioned something about Brighton over there getting a new elementary school built. And they said when that school became active, they would be doing something about that traffic control coming in and out of the neighborhood, because that's part of why it's so busy during, peak times, is because there is a new school there, but we never did have a follow-up.
That's useful information for sure. Again, Brighton will need to be partners with us and whatever problems we identify and then how we solve them. So they'll be the first call that we make. If that they may have some agreements in place that would be a really good starting point.
If I may add, sorry, this is what happens when you don't have people who've been around for a long time. They all leave. But this has come up several times in my memory. And the last time that I remember it being raised, the board was told that there is a signal planned as part of the CR2 expansion project. My memory is that, so this is just pointing you in the direction of where to start. My memory is that when we asked specifically about a light at 168th and Freestone, because that really is right now, that's the major ingress and egress from the neighborhood. They said that they weren't sure where that light was going to go because there's also that major intersection that's right there at 50th, which I think will be Himalaya once that road's put in. And they didn't want, so there's a whole level of traffic planning that's already been talked about. So I would just recommend starting there.
Thank you. That's also very helpful.
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason why it was brought to my attention. Somebody at one of the employees at the Family Dollar, and then that kind of evolved. But because the Family Dollar's right there, 3 buses drop off there, plus there's another school across the street, plus 50th being right there, the entrance to Silver Peaks and the entrance to the neighborhood across the street to the south are both right there. So it's just a horrible design, if you ask me, but I'm not a traffic guy, so I didn't do that.
Well, and I would add too, the Family Dollar has recently expanded into sort of a mini, they're more like a little mini grocer. And I've noticed it seems like there's an increase of pedestrian traffic crossing over from the Brighton side of the road to the Family Dollar side, which is a nightmare. And that the speed limit there is 45, as opposed to other parts of sort of that residential area where it's been dropped to 35. So it's pretty dangerous.
Thank you. Trustee Westcott, do you have anything further?
I do not think, or are you asking me on this issue or just in general?
In general, for the trustee comments.
I think I would just restate about a year ago, I brought up that I feel uncomfortable with my current level of knowledge about how metro districts work. And I know that we did have a presentation on that sort of the rationale about metro districts. I think my biggest underlying concern is that we are approving these debt limits and they are being passed on. I learned some things tonight. I would just like to know more about how does that debt end? Eventually, we have to have paid it back as homeowners. So maybe I'm just misunderstanding how it works at a whole level that's completely wrong. But I would like more information about that in a future meeting.
If I can jump in here, I believe if you go on cml.org on their education program, they have a few discussions on how metro districts work. And that's how I learned about them, was by attending the classes and attending the webinars. And you can live stream the webinars that they had before, and you can listen to them, and it explains more in detail how a metro district works.
I appreciate that, and I will check that out. My concern also extends to citizens. I just think in general that metro districts are a relatively new innovation. And we're talking about 20 years, but most people buy their first home. This may be their first experience with a metro district. They don't really understand what they're getting themselves into in terms of that. And so it's not just about me, it's about making sure that our residents, the community, has an informed sense of what those are and how they're different from maybe their conventional understanding of how a home is financed. That's it. Thank you.
We'd be happy to do that. Trustee Westcott makes a good point. By having an agenda item at a board meeting allows us to do a public presentation that's then recorded. It can be a source of information for residents. As you heard tonight, metro districts are an important tool in land development. There's a lot of development yet to occur in the town of Lochbuie, so it's an important thing for board members to be aware of. So we'll work on adding that to a future agenda.
And I agree with that. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say thank you again to staff for the getting the budget over the finish line, the very detailed professional presentation that you put together for all of us all the time. So thank you for that.
And my only comments are, I'll be starting my 9th year on the board in April. It's amazing the improvements I've seen in this town, and staff is a large part of that. Thank you very much. And the board getting along and working together to do things, no matter whether you agree with it or disagree with it. At least if it passes, you go along with it and get it done. And I want to thank everybody for their hard work over the past 8.5 years. Thank you very much. My term is coming to an end here next year. I will be working diligently to get us into a home rule city. And thank you very much, and happy holidays to everybody, even though I'm a bah humbugger.
Mayor Pro Tem, I just want to, after all board comments are done, just one final comment, if I might.
Go ahead.
Is there any, well, actually two things. One, happy holidays, certainly for everybody. This is our last meeting of the year. But secondly, I did send an email earlier today that you may not have had a chance to read, proposing or informing of you of our decision to settle a water case where the town plays a minor role If there's no objection, that's great. We'll move forward. If you have questions, either now or later, just let us know. Mr. N has suggested that we formalize settlement authority. That's a good thing for us to have clear so that the board and staff knows how to handle things like that as we move forward. So we'll add that to a future board meeting agenda as well. So thank you.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Good.
Second.
I don't need a roll call. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
Bye. Merry Christmas, everyone.